Okay. Hi everyone. So this is a project I've been working on for like 3 years now. What is Aeacus and why does it matter to you? So it's an open source vulnerability remediation scoring engine. Big words. It's a very cool blue team operating system scoring engine. Is like how I would actually describe it to someone. So I'll actually explain what it is in a second. But first off, hi, I'm Tyler. I'm a first year cybersecurity major. I like breaking things. Not on purpose, but like it happens and then it's really funny when it does. I like researching blue team stuff. I look at the OS things. I just like digging and rabbit holing. It's a great time. Occasionally I do sysadmin stuff. I play a lot of Minecraft and other games, but mostly Minecraft. Yeah. I'm a Star Patriot nerd. A while ago, I got like 54th in Flat Open, if you care. And then, I don't know, the rest of this doesn't matter. So, what is Aeacus? Call it whatever you want, pronounce it however you want. Like, there's 4 developers that like actually work on the project, and none of us pronounce it the same way. So, I don't care how you pronounce it. But our official, like, if you read our GitHub, it's an open source vulnerability remediation scoring engine, which is a bunch of stupid big words. So evidently it's open source, it's on GitHub, you can find it, it's great. Vulnerability remediation. That is, like, essentially we score the goal of the software is to score problems in an operating system. And then a microphone further away from my face to the side, like this. That's better. My bad. Thank you. So it's scoring like problems in the operating system, and as people go through, the operating system and fixing the problems, that's what they're scoring. And so the scoring engine itself, it's just a system that sits in the background and scores things. And oh yeah, it assigns points. That's an important part because we really like when the funny numbers go up. So it's written in Go. Love Go. Go's great. It runs on Windows, Debian-based operating systems, and then sort of on Fedora. It's iffy. It's mostly supported. It's a very little simple system, but it's incredibly powerful and versatile. There's a lot of things you can do with it. Like the more you use it, the more you realize you can do stuff, despite the fact that it seems limited when our documentation for all the things you can do is like a 5-second read. So there's a remote HTTP scoreboard utility as well. So you can link multiple like virtual machines that are running Aeacus together. And then you can see like a nice big scoreboard of like you and other people and like graphs over time and stuff. It's nice. Oh, and so you configure it with TOML, which is really nice. So it makes it configurations nice and readable. Like you actually understand what it's doing instead of it being something really complex and hard to read. So from the config file, it reads a bunch of checks. Checks are all in this sort of like a style. So they're really nice. They're really legible. The way that checks work is, so every new check, which assigns like it, so one check is worth X amount of points and has like X message or whatever and hints. So once you've defined your check, it looks for all fails. Fails don't have to be at the top. Like it'll parse it out and figure it out. You could have a fail down here and it would still fail. But so all fails, if any single one of these checks it passes. So like if the schedule service isn't running, and then because it's listed as a fail, then the rest of this check is done. It's not going to give you points even if everything else was right. If schedule wasn't up, it doesn't matter. And so you can have multiple different fails to like see if any number of things aren't there or aren't right, then it'll just completely ignore the rest of this check. But then from there, you have to have all of your passes or any singular pass override. So if I have only one of these but not the other one, this check won't pass. But if this is, and it hasn't failed, then it will pass. In this particular example, I forgot to assign like a custom message or a points value, but you know, you would just write that like message equals and then a string and then points equals a random integer of how many points you want to give them. There's also no limit to points, so you can just hand people like millions of points. I mean, it's all relative to your own scale, so it doesn't matter, but there's no limit. Um, yeah, you can assign points, custom scoring messages, and custom hints. The hints and the message isn't shown on that photo, though. So there are 31 types of checks, and that sounds like sort of not many, but they're really powerful checks. For example, like file contains. You can look at any file in an operating system, or you can even string multiple of those together to look at like the different configuration files. So if you're looking at something like SSH, right? No, SSH doesn't have like a subdirectory of configs. Oh, let's look at the sudoers file, right? Someone could be actually editing the sudoers file itself in an operating in like Linux, and so like there could be something contained in that file, or you can do something in like a directory contains where it'll like recursively go through every single file and look for that specific configuration piece. So if you said like everyone in the group of like RITSEC gets to have the permission to run this command without a password or something, right? That you could be put it that in like and check for it in the actual sudoers file. You can check for it in any like file in the sudoers.d subdirectory. So the checks seem like there's not that many with only 31, but you can do a lot with them. And then there are 14 that are cross-platform. So whether you're working on Windows or on a Debian-based distro, the check will be completely identical. There are a few others that are technically identical, but the way they work is drastically different, and they have like different arguments and stuff, whether you're on Linux or you're on Windows, so they're not cross-platform checks. That's all listed in the documentation, though, and we have nice big notes that tell you whether or not it's going to work on something else. You can negate any check as well, so making sure that a file like doesn't contain, that RITSEC gets to run that one command without a password, right? So you can do that to any of the 31 checks. And then any check that is looking for like whether something contains something, so like how I was talking about where it contains that line of like those, RITSEC get to run that command without a password, you can use regular expressions or regex on those types of checks. And then using regex, you'll be able to parse out in that specific file any kind of sudoers rule, just in case it doesn't completely match with like the right space, or if they used a tab instead of a space. You can use regex to just, find any white space character in there. And then your checks have a higher chance of passing when one of your competitors does something different that you don't realize. So when I started with Aeacus, I've been using the project for like 6 months to make my own VMs to give to other people for like learning purposes. I opened a Git issue, and that was my first time like actually interacting with the developers and stuff. My first issue was how to compile, which was kind of painful. It was like a week long of going back and forth, where then they went, "Are you using Windows?" And I went, "Yeah." And they're like, "Stop using Windows and just compile on Linux because that's all we have support for." And then I was like, "Okay." So a month later, I was off and going. I was having a great time adding new functionality. My first addition was checking the version of a program, because you could check if it was installed, but not what version was installed. So that was a nice new check to have. That's not supposed to say comments. That's supposed to say commits. That's my bad. So 31 commits of like new features and about 1,000 lines of just adding stuff and and just adding things. I don't know. I do a lot. I'm around. I answer a lot of questions for. I think we have like 200 people who are like regular visitors to our GitHub, and by regular, I think GitHub defines that as like weekly visits. So we have a pretty active community, in my opinion. We actually have multiple people who like work at GitHub that use this, which I think is cool. and I helped with like our major V2 rewrite, which was we completely redid our how everything worked. It's a much faster system now. It has uses a lot more reflection, but it's also more secure and less likely to completely destroy itself, which is nice. And then I do a lot of documentation, so I make sure it's all readable. I make sure it's nice. I make sure it's easy to understand, because I may not speak the best, but I write pretty good documentation, in my opinion. Um, and so, yeah, I also added this stuff for reading the README, because we also didn't have a system for people to like see the README that you would make, and until you finished, like deploying it to other people, and so you would often have a really broken README, and that would make people upset. So I added a system where you can either just generate it and then go read it yourself, or you can like generate everything and see what it does, which is nice. Um, so it was my first experience with Go, which was nice. Where did the photos go? Why are the photos? Oh, there we go. Oh, they're there. Cool. So it's my first experience with Go. Learning Go through um, something that works with operating systems was a little difficult, because instead of just my first little thing being like hello world, my first thing was making a function that interacts with like OS APIs to get the versions of programs, which wasn't bad. It was just definitely interesting. It's now my primary language that I go to for a lot of things. Is it my favorite? Probably not, but it's what I write most of my things in. And it was just a great learning experience in general working with Aeacus. And my advice to people who like want to go and learn things, or even if you didn't want to learn things but you're just interested in something, find a project you enjoy, start a project you enjoy, just have that idea, and then go after it and work on it. And you'll find that you learned a lot along the way, a lot more than what you learned in class. Honestly, it's just if you go find something you're interested in and commit to it, and then funny memes, hee. So what's next for Aeacus right now is we're planning on switching from, right now a lot of our checks for Windows run through PowerShell, which isn't the best. We're trying to move away from that because it's really easy to trace PowerShell stuff. And so we do have warnings in our docs that is like, if you really care about competitors going in and like, tracing the engine and spoofing, perhaps don't use any check that runs on PowerShell because it's bad, which greatly limits your ability to do stuff on Windows. But none of the developers are Windows users anyway, so that's part of our problem, is we did like minimal effort on the Windows side. But I'm actually writing stuff for Windows API, so it actually is harder to trace and things and uses DLLs. It's great. And that also ties into like the check obfuscation, because again, when it's running through PowerShell and you can just trace and or log any PowerShell instance, that's kind of bad. We're also planning on changing the check system. So while it already has a lot of functionality, we realized that having even like there are some limitations in small edge cases. So we're having a even more proficient system that's going to be more like the Boolean satisfaction. I don't really remember what it is. Style checks. It's over the top, but it includes a lot more abilities for grouping checks and having ways to just make like essentially an infinitely long like this and that or that, not this. Like you can group it however you want, which will be a really nice upgrade. And then a configuration assistant software, so that way, even though I feel like the checks were pretty easy to read, having some kind of an interface where you can just go in, click the type of check that you want, and then fill in like the data, so you don't need to type it all from scratch. And there's like a nice UI for people who maybe are a little intimidated by writing everything through, a nice big configuration file and would rather to have something visual to click on. That's one of our next goals as well. So why am I telling you about this software? It's good for preparing for cybersecurity, like blue team, red team competitions, like Hivestorm, which was last Saturday, CCDC, and IRSEC, which is November 4th. So it's good when you like make a VM and you install a scoring engine on it, because it helps you think about how the different things are going to be scored during the competition, because that was honestly like a huge revelation for me as a big SciPat nerd, was going from seeing things as, oh, it's scored by these people and they're scoring things, it's weird, to this is actually how it works and this is how things are scored, because they're just looking at it from the perspective of the scoring engine. It's hard to describe, but once you start messing with it, you get this like absolutely brain explosion of understanding. It's awesome. And then you can also make VMs and then send them to your friends, because making it for yourself, theoretically, you'd know all the answers. But if I made a VM and I was like, Nathan, do you want to do my new cybersecurity practice VM? You would say yes, right? You would say yes?
Definitely.
Yeah, you would say yes. And then you would get a great learning experience out of it. Yeah, and if you're interested in like operating system security and just cybersecurity in general, it's a great practice tool. Again, like if you're making it just for yourself, I would imagine you would know your own answers, so it's not that fun. But if like you make one, send it to your friends, then your friends send you one back, that's fun. That is actually something that I do. And then you can run your own competitions too, assuming you find infrastructure. But I mean, if you just tell people run the VM yourself and then make sure that your firewall is able to access this web portal, then you're good. So, you can run the online scoreboard yourself, which is pretty minimal, and then just send all your friends the thing and be like, we're gonna compete now. We're gonna compete against each other, which is also something I've done. It's fun. It's fun. The scoreboard, I wish I had photos. I was too lazy to set it up last night, so I didn't, and then I didn't take photos because I didn't set it up. Sorry. But it's nice. It's a really cool interface. You can also send out like announcements at the top of it. So when you realize that you might have messed something up in your image, which is regular for me, oops, I just send a little announcement and then it goes at the top of all of the scoreboards saying, hey, I screwed this up. This check doesn't work. I'm very sorry. And then speaking of use cases, there's also like ways that you could use this in the demos. So finding flags and like files and stuff and like working through pfSense boxes is great, but this can add more variety too. Not saying the other ways are bad, but this is just another way that we could. So after you do tasks or like go through objectives on the system, it could give you like entire flags if you did something, or it could just like give you like a part of it, and then you need to like go through and do stuff. Like you could literally have it where you need to do like 20 different things, and it would just let you know like when you've done all the little like individual things, and then just have a flag appear once you got to the 100 points or whatever. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with that, and it would be great for just going through and needing to understand like all of these different parts of like this is how like securing Windows works, or this is how securing Linux works. You could test people on like 20 different security issues to give them flags, and it's also actually been used in other CTFs, notably Imaginary CTF. But we've seen it in 2 other CTFs. There might have been more, and they just never said, "Hey, we're using this," or like gave us a shout out, which is fine. I don't mind. But yeah, so it's people have picked this up and used it for more than just cybersecurity competitions, which is really nice in my opinion. If you want to learn more about the project, check out our GitHub, or ask me questions, and I'm happy to respond and like talk about it. I like talking about this project; it's very fun. There also aren't many alternatives to this software because the rest of them are like closed source and not publicly available. I guess there's one alternative for Windows, but it only supports Windows 7 and below. So is that really the solution today? I don't think so. Because I think the unfortunate part of it is that there's no big organization that is, helping to improve this area of like the community when it comes to actually scoring on operating systems. There's plenty of different options for scoring, like network services. There's ScoreStack. There's Dwayneinator 4000. There's a couple other things. So there's a lot for like the CCDC realm where it's like, or like the networks portion of like CCDC, but there's not a lot for just sitting on the operating system and scoring like when someone changes a password or like a group policy change. I wish there was more. And the unfortunate part is this took a lot of students to make. Like, there's like, I think there was 10 of us that are technically all part of the project. Um, and there's a lot of people who go, yeah, I want to make one, and I'll make it better than yours. And I'm like, great, do that. I would love to see more competition. But the truth of the matter is, this is like a really big undertaking, and it takes a lot of time, effort, and energy to make a scoring engine, more than a lot of people originally believe. I wish there were more competing options though, because I would love to try them out and be like, hey, here's a feature idea for you, and I will also take feature ideas from you for my thing. Because competition's always good; it makes everybody better. Yeah. Any questions? Yes.
Will this run on Windows Server 2008?
What's running on Windows Server 2008?
Will this run?
Yeah. Yeah, it should run on anything that is running on the NT kernel. Well, actually, yeah, anything running on the NT kernel. Yes.
How many hours have you contributed to this project?
Too many. No, actually, that's a lie. Not enough. A lot though. A lot of nights where I just don't sleep, but that's okay. Yes.
How do you prevent something from like losing? How's like the config test or whatever? Because like
So
I know like older side of things scoring engines had like you could like physical notes near them and they started stuff like
yeah.
That.
We have no option to prevent that, but unlike Cyber Patriot, where it's like a high risk, high reward scenario there for like reversing it, and they have a bunch of tools for that. That's a future plan for us, but it's not a high priority because the truth of the matter is, if you're making something as a community for other people, you would hope that they would like go to do it the right way and not just spoof their way right through it. Yeah, we do take steps though to encrypt your like scoring configuration, and then it unencrypts it in memory and then spits it back out. So it's not like it's just sitting there in like the TOML, so someone could just walk in and get the stuff. It's obfuscated, but it's far from perfect. Yes.
You said you have this set up for Debian and possibly Fedora. RITSEC occasionally does work on things like pfSense. Are there any plans to expand this to other operating systems? And if so, at what case?
Can you repeat the question to the screen?
Yeah. The question was, it works on Debian-based systems and Fedora-ish. Are there plans to go towards other distributions, and at what pace? The pace, truthfully, is when we feel like it. Yeah, and well, it also doesn't help that we're not even like an organized group. It's just students that go, oh, you know what, I have time, and that's about it. If there were better options for like a roadmap, we would have a roadmap, but I don't think anyone wants to like commit hours a week to the project. It's more of just I feel like it right now. But yeah, our goal is to get more distribution support eventually. And it only officially runs on Debian-based systems and Fedora. I 100% guarantee to you it will work on other things. We just can't tell you that 100% of the checks will work, because I can also guarantee something will break. But the binary itself will be fully functional. There was another hand like this way-ish, and then I forgot. Yes?
Have you seen some of like the other projects? Like I know for CBT we started scoring engines for like mailing off, and the one being like was a bunch of different like Docker containers, or it's just called scoring engine. Have you come across that one?
I don't particularly know if I've seen scoring engine, or maybe if I had, it went more into the realm of like network connected or like uptime sort of a scoring engine, which is in a similar realm of it's a cybersecurity scoring engine, but it's more for just scoring from like a remote side, if I remember right, of like this box is up, I can access its service, where this one is on box doing on box things. That's the big difference and why there's only one of it, as far as I'm aware, at least. Well, they both have their place though, because the remote stuff is good for testing that you have network connectivity. Aeacus is no way of guaranteeing that a remote client can connect in. Well, I suppose it. No, it can't. Any other questions? Yes.
You know what Aeacus translates to French means?
I have no idea in French, but
It means lanyard. Clap it up.
whoa!
Here you go. That was his first little presentation. That's great. Thank you so much, Tyler.